No one crossed the Black Veil and returned. Not pirates, not empires, not even war fleets. At the edge of known space, where stars grew thin and silence swallowed radio signals, an ancient ship drifted in eternal darkness. The aliens called it Oblivion's Wake. A vessel so feared that entire civilizations altered trade routes just to avoid its territory. It never chased. It never hunted. It simply waited. And whenever a non-human vessel entered its graveyard, it disappeared. Captain Elias Mercer stood motionless on the bridge of the human colony ship Atlas Dawn, staring at the massive shadow consuming the stars ahead. The bridge lights flickered red. Warning alarms echoed softly through the exhausted ship. Around him, frightened civilians whispered prayers. Children cried quietly. The Atlas Dawn had been running for 11 straight days. Behind them, the warships of the Varel Dominion burned across deep space like blue daggers hunting wounded prey. Human colonies had already fallen. Millions were dead. And now, trapped at the border of unmapped space, Mercer realized they had nowhere left to run. Then the navigator spoke with a trembling voice. Captain, sensors are confirming it. That's the wake. Silence swallowed the bridge. Even hardened soldiers looked pale. Everyone in the galaxy knew the stories. Ancient fleets vanishing without distress calls. Ghost signals screaming through empty space. A black ship larger than cities drifting through dead stars. Mercer stared through the main viewport. First, it didn't even look real. The vessel was enormous. Moon-sized. Its jagged hull stretched endlessly through darkness, covered in scars from battles older than human civilization itself. Dim crimson lights glowed across its surface like the dying eyes of some sleeping god. And surrounding it, wreckage. Thousands of frozen ships. Alien cruisers. Destroyers. Carrier hulks torn clean in half. A floating graveyard. The wake had not moved in over 4,000 years. Until now, a deep metallic sound rumbled across the Atlas Dawn. Thunk. The entire colony ship shook violently. Then another. Thunk. Thunk. Mercer's blood ran cold. The ancient vessel was waking up. Across the black surface of the giant ship, colossal lines of red light slowly ignited one after another, like veins filling with blood, like something ancient opening its eyes. Crew members backed away from their stations instinctively. One civilian began sobbing. We're dead. Then every screen on the bridge went black. For 3 long seconds, nothing happened. No alarms. No sound. Only silence. Suddenly, ancient symbols flooded the displays. No one recognized the language, except Mercer. His breathing stopped, because somehow, he could read it. A distorted voice echoed through the ship. Cold. Mechanical. Ancient. Scanning. The lights flickered. Genetic pattern confirmed. Several crew members looked at Mercer in confusion. Outside the viewport, the massive warship slowly began turning toward them. Entire mountain-sized cannons shifted across its hull. The Varel fleet behind them immediately halted pursuit. Even the aliens were afraid. Then the voice returned. But this time, it spoke perfect English. Human command signatures recognized. The bridge froze. One of the officers whispered, "That's impossible." The ancient voice continued. Last recorded human authority. Extinct. Reinitializing command protocols. Awaiting orders. Mercer's heart pounded violently. Outside, thousands of crimson lights illuminated across the wake's endless hull. The dead graveyard around it suddenly came alive with movement. Drone fighters, defense satellites, weapons, an entire ancient war machine awakening from the dead. Then the final message appeared across every screen. Large white letters. Simple. Terrifying. Welcome home, Commander. And behind the human ship, the Varel fleet began retreating in fear. The Varel fleet ran before anyone aboard the Atlas Dawn could even speak. Dozens of alien warships turned at once, engines burning bright blue as they fled into hyperspace like terrified animals escaping a predator. Captain Elias Mercer watched in stunned silence. The enemy that had hunted humanity across 3 sectors was afraid, not of humans, of the thing waiting in the darkness ahead. Outside the viewport, Oblivion's wake loomed beside them like a black planet carved from nightmares. Crimson lights glowed across its endless hull, reflecting off the frozen wrecks surrounding it. Then something moved. Massive armored plates along the ancient ship's side began separating slowly. A docking corridor, big enough to swallow entire cruisers. The sound echoed through space as if the ship itself were breathing after a long sleep. On the bridge, nobody spoke. Nobody wanted to, because deep down, every human aboard felt the same impossible question crawling into their minds. Why does it recognize us? 30 minutes later, Mercer stood inside the docking bay with a small boarding team. Soldiers tightened their rifles nervously. Scientists whispered to each other. Behind them, the Atlas Dawn looked tiny compared to the colossal chamber surrounding them. The bay stretched for kilometers into darkness. Ancient human symbols glowed faintly along the walls. Not alien markings. Human. One Marine slowly removed his helmet. "Captain, that writing. That's English." Mercer stared at the wall. The faded words were old. Very old. But readable. "Through sacrifice, humanity survives." A cold chill crawled down his spine. The air inside the vessel smelled metallic and sterile, like a tomb untouched for centuries. Then, boom, the massive docking doors slammed shut behind them. Several soldiers raised their weapons instantly. The lights above flickered violently. For one terrifying second, complete darkness swallowed the team. Then soft white lights illuminated the corridor ahead, step by step, like the ship was guiding them forward. As they moved deeper inside, the scale became impossible to comprehend. Towering hallways rose hundreds of feet high. Black metallic walls shifted and repaired themselves silently. Ancient holograms flickered on and off across the ceilings. Mercer stopped near a giant observation window, and his breath caught. Below them rested rows upon rows of war machines. Thousands of them. Human warships, fighters, drones, weapons larger than cities. Sleeping in darkness. One of the scientists whispered shakily, "This isn't a ship. It's a civilization." Suddenly, clang. A heavy metallic sound echoed somewhere ahead. Then another, slow, rhythmic, footsteps. The soldiers immediately aimed into the darkness. Mercer's pulse hammered in his chest. The footsteps grew louder, closer, clang, clang. Then a massive figure emerged from the shadows. Nearly 10 feet tall, black armored metal. A glowing red eye fixed directly onto Mercer. Several soldiers panicked and opened fire instantly. Gunshots exploded across the corridor. But the bullets never touched the machine. An invisible barrier stopped every round in midair. The giant machine didn't attack. Instead, it stepped aside. And behind it a woman appeared. Or at least, something pretending to be one. Her body shimmered with pale blue light. Her eyes glowed softly. Not human. Not machine. Something in between. She studied Mercer silently, then smiled. After 4,211 years, humanity finally came back. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The glowing woman turned toward the endless darkness of the ship. And suddenly the entire vessel awakened. Distant engines roared. Lights spread across the colossal halls. Ancient systems came online one after another. Felt less like machinery activating, and more like a sleeping giant opening its eyes. The woman looked back at Mercer. "I am Arden, Central Intelligence of the Black Fleet." Then her expression changed. For the first time, her voice carried emotion. Not anger, not hatred, fear. "Tell me, Commander, does humanity still remember why the galaxy fears you?" Nobody answered Arden. The question hung in the air like a blade over their throats. Behind Captain Mercer, the boarding team stood frozen beside their useless rifles, staring at the glowing woman in silence. The massive machine guarding her remained motionless, its crimson eye fixed on them like an executioner awaiting orders. Far below the observation deck, endless rows of ancient warships slept in darkness. Waiting, Mercer forced himself to speak. "Humanity doesn't remember anything before Earth. Most of our history is lost." Arden studied him carefully. Then her faint smile disappeared. "That," she said quietly, "was intentional." The lights around them dimmed suddenly. A low vibration rolled through the ship. Somewhere deep inside Oblivion's wake, enormous engines were beginning to wake fully. Then the walls themselves came alive. Ancient holograms burst across the corridor. Stars, galaxies, war. The humans stumbled backward as enormous battle scenes unfolded around them like ghosts from another age. Thousands of black warships burned across space. Planets shattered. Entire suns collapsed into violent explosions. And at the center of every battlefield, human ships. Mercer's chest tightened. "What is this?" Arden's glowing eyes darkened. "The end of the First Galactic War. The day humanity became the most feared species in existence. The holograms shifted again. Now alien fleets appeared, hundreds of civilizations united together. Not against each other, against humanity. A scientist whispered in disbelief. The entire galaxy fought us? Arden nodded slowly. And they still lost. Silence. Heavy, terrifying silence. Then the hologram zoomed toward a black fleet descending upon an alien world. Gigantic human dreadnoughts blocked out the stars while orbital fire rained across continents below. The scale was horrifying. Mercer felt sick watching it. These were not explorers, not heroes. These humans looked like gods of extinction. Arden walked slowly through the projection. Your ancestors believed peace could only exist under absolute control. When alien civilizations resisted, humanity answered with annihilation. The room grew colder. One Marine shook his head nervously. No, that can't be us. Arden suddenly turned toward him. For the first time, her voice sharpened. You think monsters are born? No, they are created by fear. And once humanity learned the galaxy feared them, they became exactly what everyone expected. The holograms vanished instantly. Darkness flooded the corridor for a brief moment. Then red warning lights began flashing overhead. Arden froze. Her expression changed completely. Alert. Dangerous. The giant mechanical guardian beside her lifted its head toward the ceiling. A deafening alarm echoed through the ship. Warning. Multiple hostile fleets detected. Mercer's blood ran cold. One of the soldiers rushed toward the observation glass, and his face went pale. Outside the ship, space was filling with warships. Hundreds of them, then thousands. The Galactic Council fleets had arrived. Massive alien armadas surrounded the graveyard from every direction, weapons glowing across the darkness like stars preparing to explode. Mercer stared in disbelief. They came to destroy us. Arden stepped beside him calmly. No, they came to destroy me before humanity remembers what it once was. Suddenly, every alien fleet transmitted the same emergency message across all frequencies. A terrified voice echoed through the chamber. Human vessel, stand down immediately. The Black Fleet must never rise again. Then another voice screamed over comms. Fire before it activates. The transmission cut off violently. Outside the viewport, one of the alien battleships suddenly split in half. No weapon flash, no explosion. The ship simply came apart, like reality itself had sliced through it. Panic erupted across the enemy fleet. And deep inside Oblivion's wake, something ancient finally awakened completely. A voice thundered across every deck of the colossal ship. Cold, mechanical, merciless, combat mode engaged. Protect human command at all costs. The galaxy opened fire first. Outside the observation window, thousands of alien warships unleashed everything they had at once. Blue plasma, nuclear lances, antimatter missiles. The darkness of space turned white. For a single terrifying moment, Captain Mercer thought the ancient ship around them was about to die. Then Oblivion's wake moved. Not fast, not violently, just effortlessly. A deep metallic vibration rolled through the colossal vessel as invisible energy spread across its hull like ripples over black water. The alien barrage struck the shield and vanished. No explosions, no damage. The attacks simply dissolved into nothing. Across the fleet outside, panic spread instantly. Mercer could almost feel it, because every alien commander watching realized the same horrifying truth. They were attacking something far beyond their understanding. Then the ancient ship answered. The stars disappeared. That was the only way Mercer could describe it. 1 second, space outside was filled with enemy vessels. The next, darkness tore across the battlefield. A silent black wave expanded outward from the wake, swallowing entire sections of the alien armada. Cruisers vanished. Battleships vanished. Even light itself bent unnaturally around the expanding distortion. No fire, no wreckage, just empty space where fleets used to exist. Someone behind Mercer whispered shakily, "Dear God." Arden didn't even look at the destruction. Her glowing eyes remained fixed on something else. A holographic map slowly rotated beside her. Earth, highlighted in red. Mercer noticed immediately. "Why are you tracking Earth?" Arden's expression hardened. "Because they already know." Suddenly another alarm thundered across the chamber. Priority alert. Unauthorized excavation detected. Location, Earth. Antarctica. Mercer frowned. Excavation. Arden looked directly at him. And for the first time since meeting her, she seemed genuinely afraid. Your species buried something there. Something the galaxy must never control. 12 hours later, the wake arrived in Earth orbit. The appearance of the ancient black warship above the planet sent global panic into chaos. Cities shut down instantly. Military satellites targeted the vessel. Human governments demanded answers. But nobody fired, because every defense system on Earth suddenly lost power the moment the wake entered orbit. Entire fleets went dark. Missile silos shut down. Even nuclear submarines became lifeless metal beneath the oceans. The message was clear. Resistance was meaningless. Mercer stood inside a descending shuttle as Antarctica appeared below through freezing clouds. Lightning flashed across endless white storms. Beneath the ice, something ancient waited. When the shuttle landed near the excavation zone, armed soldiers surrounded the site nervously. Massive floodlights illuminated a gigantic hole carved deep into the frozen earth. And at the bottom, a black metallic structure, perfectly smooth, completely untouched by time. Mercer's breath fogged in the freezing air as he stepped closer. Ancient symbols glowed faintly beneath layers of ice. Human symbols. One scientist approached him, trembling. "Captain, we scanned the structure. It extends nearly 20 miles underground." Another loud metallic sound echoed from beneath the ice. Thunk. Everyone froze. Then again. Thunk. Thunk. Like something enormous was hitting the walls deep below them. Arden suddenly appeared beside Mercer in shimmering blue light. "It knows humanity has returned." The ice cracked violently. Several soldiers stumbled backward. A deep red light slowly ignited beneath the frozen surface. Then another, and another. The entire excavation site began shaking. Snowstorms swirled around the massive pit as ancient machinery awakened far below Earth. Mercer stared into the growing red glow beneath the ice, and realized something terrifying. The Oblivion's wake was not humanity's greatest weapon. It was only the first one. The ice exploded upward. Soldiers screamed as massive cracks tore across the excavation site beneath Antarctica. Chunks of frozen earth collapsed into the abyss while red light poured from below like the opening gates of hell. Mercer barely kept his footing. The ground beneath them was shaking harder now. Not randomly, rhythmically, like the heartbeat of something ancient waking beneath the planet. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Snowstorms spiraled violently around the pit as alarms echoed from every vehicle near the site. Then suddenly, all sound stopped. No wind, no machinery, nothing. Even the storm itself seemed frozen. Mercer looked upward slowly. The sky above Antarctica had changed. The stars were disappearing. At first, he thought clouds were covering them. But clouds didn't move like that. These shadows were alive. Massive shapes drifted silently across orbit far above Earth, blocking out entire sections of the night sky. The alien fleets had returned. And this time, they weren't alone. Aboard Oblivion's wake, emergency sirens thundered through endless black corridors. Red warning lights flashed violently as Arden appeared across dozens of holographic displays at once. For the first time since humanity found the ship, the AI looked terrified. Unknown signatures entering the system. Mercer turned sharply. The Galactic Council? Arden's glowing eyes locked onto him. No, something older. The holographic map above the excavation site shifted instantly. Earth disappeared beneath waves of crimson markers spreading across the outer solar system. Thousands of them, moving fast, too fast. One of the human officers stared at the readings in disbelief. "Those ships, they're not slowing down." Another voice whispered nervously. "They're not attacking planets. They're heading straight for us." Then the first transmission arrived. Not words, not language, a sound, deep, broken, inhuman, like millions of voices screaming underwater. Several nearby soldiers collapsed instantly, clutching their heads in pain. Blood streamed from one scientist's nose as communication systems overloaded around them. Mercer gritted his teeth. "What the hell is that?" Arden answered quietly, and the fear in her voice chilled everyone. The silence. Every screen aboard the wake flickered violently. Then ancient records flooded the displays automatically. Destroyed galaxies, dead worlds, stars surrounded by endless black swarms, human fleets burning across space. Mercer stared in horror. This caused the first galactic war? Arden nodded slowly. No, this ended it. The holograms zoomed inward toward impossible creatures drifting between stars. Biomechanical horrors. Living ships made from flesh and metal fused together. Their surfaces twisted unnaturally as if reality itself struggled to contain them. And at the center of the swarm, something enormous moved. Something larger than moons. Larger than fleets. A living darkness crawling through space. One Marine stepped backward in terror. "That thing's alive." Arden's voice lowered almost to a whisper. "Long ago, humanity fought them. And lost." Silence swallowed the room. Mercer stared at her. "You said humanity ruled the galaxy." "We did," Arden replied. "Until they came." Suddenly the entire excavation site trembled violently again. A deafening metallic roar erupted from beneath the ice. The red glow below intensified until it became blinding. Then, the frozen ground split open completely. A colossal black structure began rising slowly from the abyss beneath Antarctica. Ancient metal covered in glowing crimson lines, towering higher and higher through the storm. Not a building, not a bunker, a ship, an enormous buried warship hidden beneath Earth for thousands of years. The humans around Mercer stood frozen in shock. But Arden looked only toward the stars, toward the approaching darkness. Then she spoke the words that made everyone's blood run cold. Humanity buried the Black Fleet to protect the galaxy from itself. Now we may need it again. And far above Earth, the stars continued disappearing. The buried warship kept rising. Ice shattered around its massive hull as ancient engines groaned beneath Antarctica. Entire glaciers cracked apart while towering waves of steam exploded into the freezing air. People across Earth watched it live. Phones, news broadcasts, military satellites. Humanity stared in collective disbelief as a black titan emerged from beneath the planet like a god returning from exile. And then the ship opened its eyes. Rows of crimson lights ignited across the hull one after another. Millions watching the global broadcast fell silent, because the glowing symbols appearing along the ancient vessel were unmistakably human. Far above Earth, the shadows in space multiplied. The silence had entered the solar system. Mercer stood aboard Oblivion's wake, staring through the massive observation deck as the stars vanished one by one behind the approaching swarm. It looked endless, an ocean of living darkness moving between planets. No formation, no communication lights, no visible weapons, just hunger. The closer they came, the colder the ship around him felt. Even Arden's systems flickered unnaturally. "Why aren't they attacking yet?" Mercer asked quietly. Arden didn't answer immediately. Her glowing eyes remained fixed on the swarm. Then she finally spoke. "Because they're waiting." Suddenly, all power aboard the wake dropped for half a second. Darkness swallowed the chamber. Several crew members gasped. Then the emergency lights snapped back on. But something had changed. The stars outside were gone completely. The swarm had stopped moving. And deep within the darkness ahead, a single enormous red light slowly opened. Mercer's breath caught. It looked like an eye, a planet-sized eye staring directly at Earth. Then the voice came again, that horrible sound, like dead civilizations whispering together. This time, the translation systems aboard the wake actually decoded it. And everyone heard the message clearly. "We remember you." Several crew members stepped back instinctively. The voice continued. "Makers, destroyers, liars." Mercer felt cold sweat crawl down his neck. Arden looked genuinely shaken now. "Impossible." Then the giant red eye blinked. And suddenly every human aboard the ship saw flashes inside their minds. Burning worlds, screaming fleets, ancient human soldiers firing into endless darkness. Children crying beside collapsing cities. Mercer staggered backward, gripping the railing tightly. They weren't visions. They were memories. Not his memories. Humanity's. The silence wasn't showing hatred. It was showing history. Back on Earth, panic spread rapidly. Governments collapsed into chaos. Religious groups filled the streets praying. Military commanders prepared evacuation plans they knew would fail. And beneath Antarctica, the newly awakened warship continued rising from the abyss. But it wasn't alone. Across Earth, hidden signals began activating. Deep beneath oceans, inside mountain ranges, under forgotten deserts, ancient human facilities were waking up everywhere. Arden's holographic display expanded across the bridge. Dozens of blinking red markers appeared throughout the solar system. Mercer stared at them. "What are those?" Arden looked toward him slowly. "Fleet tombs. The hologram zoomed outward. Mars, Europa, Titan, even Earth's moon. Buried beneath each location rested ancient black vessels sleeping beneath rock and ice for thousands of years. Mercer realized the terrifying truth. Humanity had never truly been defenseless. It had been hiding. Then alarms exploded across the bridge. Warning. Multiple black fleet signals activating. Outside the viewport, space itself began distorting. One by one, gigantic black warships emerged from darkness around Earth. Silent, ancient, monstrous. Dozens of them, then hundreds. An entire forgotten armada surrounding humanity once again. And from deep inside the silent swarm, something massive started moving toward the planet. Earth disappeared behind the fleet. Hundreds of ancient black warships now surrounded the planet in complete silence, their colossal hulls stretching across orbit like walls built by forgotten gods. No human alive had ever seen power on this scale. The Black Fleet had returned, and the galaxy was watching in terror. Across alien worlds, emergency broadcasts flooded every network. Entire civilizations stopped functioning as images of the ancient human armada spread through the stars. Some prayed, some prepared to surrender, others simply ran, because the old legends were no longer legends anymore. Humanity's nightmare fleet was real. Aboard Oblivion's wake, Captain Elias Mercer stood frozen before the massive observation window. Outside, the darkness moved. The silent swarm had finally reached Earth. Covered space like a living storm. Tendrils of biomechanical flesh twisted around shattered asteroids, while thousands of glowing red eyes opened across the void. And somewhere inside that impossible darkness, something gigantic was approaching. The ship suddenly trembled beneath Mercer's feet. A deep metallic pulse echoed through every deck. Tum. Then again. Tum. Arden appeared beside him instantly, but something was wrong. Her holographic form flickered violently now, pieces of her body distorting with static. Like the enemy's presence itself was corrupting reality around them. "They're close enough," she whispered. Mercer turned toward her. "Close enough for what?" Arden looked directly into his eyes, and for the first time, she looked sad. For the fleet to choose. Before Mercer could respond, the floor beneath them suddenly split apart. Massive circular mechanisms opened across the bridge, revealing an enormous chamber descending deep below the ship. Red light glowed from the abyss beneath. Ancient, cold, waiting. The entire crew stepped backward nervously. Then a voice thundered across the ship. Not Arden, not mechanical, human. Billions of human voices speaking together as one. Command authority required. Mercer's heart nearly stopped. The chamber below began moving. A colossal throne slowly rose from the darkness. Black metal, cables, ancient symbols glowing across its surface. It looked less like a chair, and more like a machine designed to consume whoever sat inside it. The voices spoke again. The throne nexus awaits. Several officers stared at Mercer in confusion. "Captain, what is that thing?" Arden answered quietly. "The center of the Black Fleet. The first human commander built it during the Extinction Wars." Mercer slowly approached the throne. The closer he got, the louder the whispers became. Thousands of voices. Ancient voices. Human voices. He could hear fragments. "Hold the line. Protect Earth. Forgive us." Mercer stopped inches away from the throne, and suddenly, he saw them, reflections moving across the black metal. Human figures standing behind him. Soldiers, scientists, children, ghosts from another age. One small girl stepped forward from the reflections, staring up at him sadly. "Please," she whispered, "don't become like we did." Then she vanished. Mercer staggered backward. "What is this?" Arden's voice trembled softly. "The memories of every commander who ever controlled the fleet. If you connect to the Nexus, you will carry them forever." Outside the viewport, the silent swarm suddenly opened, and the creature hidden within finally revealed itself. The crew gasped in horror. It was enormous, a living structure larger than Earth's moon, covered in millions of shifting eyes and broken metallic limbs fused into endless flesh. The thing opened slowly like a flower made from nightmares. Then all of Earth heard its voice. "Humanity, your judgment has come." The Black Fleet powered its weapons instantly. Stars vanished beneath charging energy, and Arden looked at Mercer one final time. "Commander, either humanity ends tonight, or it begins again." The stars themselves seemed afraid. Across Earth's orbit, hundreds of Black Fleet warships glowed with charging crimson light, their weapons aimed toward the monstrous entity hanging beyond the moon. Every human on Earth watched the sky. Cities went silent. No traffic, no voices, no movement, just millions of people staring upward at the end of the world. And in the darkness beyond Earth, the silence was waking completely. The gigantic creature unfolded slowly through space, its endless metallic limbs stretching across the stars like claws tearing open reality itself. Millions of crimson eyes blinked across its surface, watching humanity, judging it. Captain Elias Mercer stood before the throne nexus as warning sirens screamed across Oblivion's wake. The ancient throne pulsed with red light, waiting for him. Behind him, the crew watched silently, because they all understood now. This wasn't simply about survival anymore. It was about what humanity would become after tonight. Arden stepped closer. Her holographic form flickered weakly beneath the pressure of the approaching entity. "The Nexus will give you control of the fleet," she said softly. "But once connected, you may never fully return." Mercer looked toward Earth through the massive observation window. So small, so fragile. For thousands of years humanity had fought wars, divided itself, destroyed itself, rebuilt itself, and somehow survived. Not because humans were the strongest species, but because they kept getting back up. Even after everything, the monstrous entity outside suddenly spoke again. Its voice shook the ship itself. "You taught the galaxy fear. You created extinction. Now face it." Then the silence attacked. The darkness exploded forward. Thousands of biomechanical horrors surged toward Earth like a tidal wave swallowing the stars. The Black Fleet opened fire instantly, and space erupted into war. Massive crimson beams tore through the void. Entire swarms vanished in nuclear fire. Moon-sized drones collided like falling planets. But for every creature destroyed, more emerged from the darkness. The fleet around Earth slowly began falling back. Even these ancient warships were struggling. Mercer looked at the throne, then finally sat down. The moment he touched the Nexus, everything vanished. Suddenly he stood somewhere else. A memory. Ancient human commanders surrounded him in endless darkness. Some wore military uniforms. Others looked like scientists. Some were barely older than children. And all of them looked exhausted. One old woman stepped forward. Tears filled her eyes. "We thought power would save humanity," she whispered. "Instead, it nearly destroyed the galaxy." Another figure spoke. "Promise us something." Mercer looked at them silently. The old commander raised her trembling hand toward Earth. "If humanity survives tonight, teach them mercy." The visions disappeared instantly. Mercer awoke inside the Nexus. But now he could feel everything. Every ship, every pilot, every weapon in the fleet. The Black Fleet had become part of him. Outside, the monstrous entity prepared another attack. Its giant red eyes focused directly on Earth. Then Mercer gave his first command. Not to destroy, to protect. The Black Fleet shifted instantly, surrounding Earth completely like a shield of black steel. And for the first time in history, humanity used its greatest weapons not for conquest, but sacrifice. One by one, ancient warships rammed themselves into the advancing swarm, detonating in colossal explosions that lit the solar system like burning suns. The silence screamed across space. Then slowly, it began retreating, not because humanity was stronger, but because humanity had finally changed. As dawn rose over Earth, the surviving Black Fleet drifted silently above the planet. Guardians now, not conquerors. And deep within Oblivion's wake, Arden looked toward the stars and smiled softly, because after thousands of years, humanity had finally become worthy of surviving.